Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour, every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be a part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills, or get your podcast onto Grow Radio, head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm chatting with Anna Neville, award-winning Anna Neville, and we'll come on to that later. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself to my audience?
Hello, Sandra, and hello, everybody. My name's Anna Neville. I am franchisor of a business called Kindslingo. At Kindslingo, we teach French and Spanish to young children, the 0 to 11 age range. So we go into schools, we go into nurseries, and it's all about fun. So we use a lot of songs and games and actions and just try and engage young children in languages at a really young age.
I love to dig back on my podcast. So what brought you, you said you've been trading now for 11 years. What brought you to this point? What did you do before that led you into starting a business?
Oh, well, it's a long story. I'll try to do the short version. So yes, as you say, this last week just gone, we have just celebrated our 11th year as a franchise business, which is absolutely fantastic. I love to celebrate any milestone we get to. I keep on saying in 2 years we're going to be teenagers, so that could get rocky. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I guess rewind. I had a fantastic, successful career in marketing, which I absolutely loved. Predominantly worked in London advertising agencies throughout my 20s and 30s and had a brilliant time. Absolutely loved that experience. Moved out of London and started a family. And realistically, the sort of previous career just was incompatible with young children. The hours, the unpredictability, the stresses, the strains. And my husband is actually still in that sort of line of work as well. So it was just a really incompatible situation. So I had my daughter, who's nearly 18, nearly about to be an adult. So I had my daughter, then had a little bit of a break, had my son, and then did that big reassessment of what direction do I want to go in. And I think I talk to a lot of people who are at that similar crossroads now, and therefore assessing their options, of which Kindslingo could be one. But yeah, I did that whole sort of, right, where do I want to be? What's my skill set? How can I best apply them? And just initially, it was really a bit of a toe in the water, really. I started doing some local French classes in a nursery. So my background, my initial degree was French. So, and I'd spent a year in France, and my French was okay, quite good, I like to think. So I started doing a few little local classes. Then I approached some schools, started doing some school teaching. And to be absolutely honest, it just snowballed pretty rapidly. So I was in a position where I was as full as I could be, because at the time my son was still 2 years old. So I was still wanting to be with him a lot and at home. So I reached my capacity probably within about 6 months of actually getting going. So realised that there was obviously far more scope for growth. So grew the team a bit, got some other people on board doing it, and then really started investigating growth models. And obviously there are lots of different models out there, but franchising just really caught my eye. I think it was just that way of replicating the business and getting people to take ownership and really be able to take on that role in their local area and bring that love of languages to local children in their area. So spent quite a lot of time developing the franchise model and everything one needs to do around that. And then, launched the franchise October 2013.
Fantastic. And let's just go back a little bit. Something you said, you learned French, you did a degree, you went and did a year in France, and you learned the language. You've obviously had language as a skill. Why do you think is it, or historically, they only teach languages in secondary education and they don't touch it in the majority of infant and primary? It's almost as if you're not ready for it yet, but you're probably teaching it to children far younger than that.
Absolutely, yeah. The reverse. I mean, all the scientific evidence points to the younger you start, the better, ultimately. And yeah, we've got as young as a few weeks old, we've got little ones coming to our classes. And that's really just about starting them young. Obviously, at that stage, then no one is speaking, but they absorb everything and they hear everything. And the young brain is so different from when we're older. The pathways are still whizzing around, still such a malleable thing, the brain is. So all those pathways haven't fully formed as they have when we're much older. So there's such a greater opportunity to really teach languages to children at a young age. And I think back to when we started, like 11 years ago, it was almost unheard of to be teaching languages in nurseries. And now I wouldn't say it's absolutely commonplace, but it's now pretty well spread that it is one of those options available within the early years curriculum for nursery managers to get people like ourselves in to teach the children from such a young age. And it's so much easier. The children are just so much more receptive to languages than they are even in secondary school, because they just want to have fun and we just make it fun. And I think probably that's the historical issue with us learning languages, is that it just hasn't been a particularly fun and engaging process. And combine that with starting too late in the process, which leads really to, I guess, this sort of language skills deficit that we've really got in the UK compared to most other countries around the globe.
And I think that's it. When I was, I mean, many decades ago, but I was 11 before I had my first language lesson. And then within the space of 12 months, I was taking on a second language. Now, at the time, I really struggled with languages, and I'm still trying to learn a language now. I'm trying to learn Italian, which is my sort of family language, if you're half Italian. And I'm struggling because your brain isn't as quick. You don't. And also, I think as adults, children don't care. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, children will try anything and have a go at anything, and it doesn't have to be perfect. When we're adults, we want to be perfect. And I know I won't speak Italian unless I know my sentence construction and my pronunciation is perfect. And that's just me beating myself up. Children aren't like that, are they? They'll have a go.
You're absolutely right, Sandra. They will just throw themselves into it. I mean, you just have to observe young children playing. There's no rules. They're doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and then they're mixing this with that. They don't care. They don't follow the same rules as we do as adults. And if you can make something engaging and fun and on their level, then of course they're going to engage with it. And that's really our approach. And we cover, as I said, we cover really little ones right up to the end of primary school. So our different programs are very different depending on the age of the child. But that sort of thread of really engaging them and having fun and choosing topics they like. So with like little ones, we'll be doing a dinosaur topic, for example, and we're teaching them all different colours and all the different dinosaurs and getting them to walk along like dinosaurs quickly and then slowly. And you're just doing things and using topics that really engage them to then wrap the language learning around. It's as simple as that, really.
The alternative, when you get into secondary education, you're learning grammar and verbs and
Yeah,
everything.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, that structure has to be there. But I guess we've got more freedom at the young age to really just have a lot of fun with it. And if we can set that foundation now, then they're going to be much more receptive when they move into the high school, where it has got that much more of a structure behind it. And they do have to learn so much more volume. But with us, they can just come along, absorb and enjoy the language.
Yeah, and I do remember back, it was the fun elements of the languages where it clicked for me. German, I got to go to Germany, I got to go to Cologne in Germany, and we went on a river thing, and we had to speak the language as we were going around. And I came back and I nailed that exam when I got back because I'd been immersed in it for 10 days. The same with my French. It didn't click until I did CSE, I think, GCSE year. And it didn't click till then, but I got to go to France. I got to go to the Loire Valley. I did get to take wine as well. But our teacher at the time made it so much fun. In fact, we even played games in French, and it just made it, and suddenly it all clicked in my head, whether I needed teaching in that way. But I even understood the sentence construction by the way she taught it in a fun way. And I think that's a key element to any learning.
You're right, and it is all about the teacher. I think we all look back at our education, don't we? And you can remember those teachers who made the difference and made you think, made a change. And that's what we're trying to do with our whole network of franchisees and the teachers who work with them. We're trying to get great teachers out there who can really inspire children and make it memorable, ultimately.
And let's talk about the franchise model, because it's a model where you have to have a business that is franchisable. And I hear so many people say to me, oh, I'm going to set up a franchise. And you think, well, what is the franchise? It has to be something that's scalable, has to be something you can duplicate. It has to be something where you can give people guidelines and say, well, here's the model, and this is the parameters you're going to work by. off you go. This is a proven system, and I think that's the key, isn't it? It's got to be a proven system.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, I'm in a position now where I do get people coming to me for advice, especially in the children's sector. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Not every business is franchisable, and it's not always the right. Even if it is franchisable, it's not always the right path for people. So I think it's really important, like anything in business, isn't it? It's to look at what's your goal, what's your strategy, and does franchising fit? And for some it does, and for some it doesn't. I think particularly in the children's activities market, it is the most common model by a long way. But there are other options available. But yeah, there are some sectors where I guess it is probably harder. And I think if a business relies entirely on the individual running it, it's maybe not franchisable, because you can't franchise yourself. You franchise the brand and, as you say, the system. And for us, it's the lesson plans and the resources and everything that goes with it. But if you are a business that is much more solely about the individual and their own personal work, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, then that is potentially more challenging. But I think in our sector and the children's sector and in languages, it absolutely fits. It's a perfect way to spread the business and to spread the structure, and ultimately get lots of children into languages that wouldn't maybe necessarily otherwise be attracted to it, because we get out there saying it's amazing, it's fun, it's this, it's that, and actually that draws in the audience. So it does. The franchise structure really allows individuals to have their own control of their area, their business, and, as you say, work within our guidelines, work within our parameters, but it's still them. They are still that individual running the business. And that's what I absolutely love about franchising, is that all of our franchisees, of which we've got over 80 now, it's very special because it's all personal for them. They're all on their personal missions of really bringing languages to children in their area. And they're all doing it, yes, under our brand, under our guidance, our support, our training, our parameters, all of that. But they've all got their own individual element within it. So it's that great combination for them of feeling like they're really, truly doing something for themselves, but they've got that safety net around them and they've got that support network around them.
Yeah. So for anyone that's looking to, because a lot of people go looking for franchises because they like that proven model, they like the fact they haven't got to start a business from scratch, they like the branding, they like the reputation, they just want to go in and just buy a business really off the shelf, because that's what it is really. Yeah. So to anyone looking for a franchise, do you look for people that have already got the language skills, or do you teach them the language skills?
It's the former. So yeah, we would expect people to come to the business with some degree of language skills. We don't say you have to be absolutely fluent. We don't say you have to have a degree in the language, because language skills can come from anywhere. We've got quite a lot of franchisees who are native speakers from all around the world. And again, that's an amazing thing about the sort of whole melting pot of Kindslingo. We've just got that whole multicultural feel about it. We've got a lot of people from South America. We've got one lady who's from French-speaking Canada. We've got quite a lot of native Spanish speakers and French speakers, but also people in the UK who have learned languages in lots of different ways, either as a degree or even sometimes at school, or they've just learned it later in life, or their partner is of that nationality and they've picked it up. So there's so many different ways that language comes that we don't have a sort of definitive, right, you must have X, Y, Z. But yeah, you do have to have those language skills. We're not teaching you the language before you then teach the children. But having said that, people don't have to have teaching experience. I think it can help in some ways, but actually it's not essential. And if I look at some of our most successful franchisees, they haven't come from a teaching background, or some have, but some haven't. And actually, they're just passionate about what they do. And I do think that the passion and, well, determination as well, passion and hard work, is the really winning combination. Because if you truly believe in what you're doing and you truly want to spread that, then that's the driving force behind your business, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's flip it the other way then. As franchisor, you've got 80 franchises. It's a lot to keep on top of 80 franchisees. And I imagine that you have training, regular training. Obviously, you've got onboarding with new franchisees. You have to keep in check. You have to make sure that payments, however it's structured, all come through. How do you manage all that?
It's a good question. I ask myself that question sometimes as well. But I think what we've got there are two things. We've got systems in place, and we've got brilliant people. And I think it just sort of works. And I think I talk to some franchisees all the time, and then there are other franchisees who I rarely talk to, and they're just getting on with things. So for some people, I'm that sounding board sometimes on a day-to-day basis of like, oh, can I just run that past you? Or, oh, what do you think about this? And that's absolutely fine. For others, they will only come to me if there's a problem and they really need help or solutions or guidance or whatever it is. And equally, that's totally fine as well. I'm not sitting on a franchisee's shoulder, tapping them, going, do you need me? Do you need me? What do you want? What are you doing? How are you doing it? Because they're business people. They are running, they're their own solopreneurs. They are running their own businesses within the structure. And all of the guidance is there, all of the systems are there. And also I'm there, and others are there to give them guidance as and when they need, but it's not prescriptive. It's not right, you must check in at least once a week, you must do this. I think you have to, as a franchisor, I always think you have to build mutual respect. It's not a one-way street. It's an absolute two-way street. You want them to be successful for them. You want them to be successful for the business. They want to be successful for themselves, but they also hopefully want to be successful for the greater Kindslingo. So it's an absolute two-way street between the individuals. So yeah, so I guess every conversation, every bit of support is tailored to that particular franchisee who needs it, and it balances. I don't quite know how. There must be some science behind it.
Doing something right.
Yeah, there are obviously, don't get me wrong, there are times when there's like, oh my goodness, it's so busy, and then there are times where I'm like, oh okay, it's a bit quieter today, but it's fine. It really does balance out. But as I said, it comes down to the franchisees. They are all absolutely amazing, wonderful people, and I think if you give people the right tools, but also give them the freedom to grow and flourish in the right way, but always be there as that backstop, always be there to hold their hand if they need it. I think that just breeds a sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility. It's a bit like parent-child, isn't it? To a certain degree. With children, it's like there comes a point where you just go, you think about this, you make your own decision about this. And actually, the more you do that, the more responsible and the more mature they become. And it's relatively similar with franchisees. If you give them that freedom and you give them that empowerment to make their own decisions, but also they can check them back with me if they want to, I think it just breeds that confidence, because so few franchisees start with lots of business experience. Most of them haven't really had business experience when they come on board, so the first few months especially can be quite daunting. But I think if you guide and ask them, well, what do you think? I'm not telling you what to do. What do you think would be the best thing? And let's talk around that and work out how that can work for you. I think if you gradually empower them to make their own decisions, plough their own path, it just leads to a greater sense of ownership of their franchise and therefore success.
So anyone that's looking to franchise their business, where would be the first place they would start? Where would they go? I mean, you hear about the British Franchise Association.
Yeah, they're brilliant. They're a really great organisation. I think it depends on your sector, to be absolutely honest. In the children's activities sector, which is the one I obviously know the best, there's huge support around. There's Facebook groups, there are people who do sort of coaching for it, people who take you through the whole franchise process, marketing experts. There's a whole range of different people there now, which, to be honest, when 11 years ago, that structure just wasn't there. But nowadays you can join a Facebook group and ask questions, and you'll get people like myself and many others just responding and saying, oh, well, I do this, or this is what I do, or this is how I started. So I think you can always reach out. And I think that's probably potentially replicated to a certain degree in other sectors. I think probably the children's sector, certainly what I've witnessed of the children's sector, is it's incredibly collaborative, even with competitors. And that's quite an interesting scenario. I think even with competitors, everybody is very supportive of each other. It tends to be quite female dominant, not exclusively by any means, but I think it tends to be quite female. So there's a lot of female camaraderie there in terms of supporting fellow female entrepreneurs. So I think that's always a good place to look. But whatever industry you're in and thinking about franchising, there will be those types of groups and situations. But yeah, I mean, the BFA are absolutely fantastic. On the children's side, there's something called the Children's Activities Association, which we've been a part of for a good long time now. And there's lots of there's ICAP as well. There's lots of great organisations in this sector. And there are a lot of franchise shows. So there's usually the exhibition at the NEC, and I think there's a London-based one as well. So just wandering around those again is a great way of sort of absorbing information, and just reaching out to people. If I don't know something, I will always tell somebody, but I'd rather that they reached out to say, oh, could we have a chat about this? Because I did that myself. There are now people that I would call my peers, my colleagues in the franchise industry, and I reached out to them when I was really starting out, and they were wonderful, and I'd always do the same for others.
Now, obviously, you've got a very established franchise, a reputable franchise, you're an award-winning franchise, but there are some franchises out there that aren't so reputable. So if somebody's looking to buy into a franchise, they need to do their due diligence, they need to do their research, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. I always say to people, ask as many questions as you want. And actually the questions they ask is quite indicative of how much research that they've done. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're look at everything related to the brand. Obviously, the website goes without saying, but all of the social media, and not just the head office social media. I think it's really important to look at the social media of the franchisees, because they are the day-to-day people out there delivering the classes. So yeah, look at all the social media, Google Business, Google reviews, just Google the business as a whole and see what comes up. Talk to others in the industry, really just talk to as many people as possible. If you know people who've sort of attended our classes, or customers that work with us, or any brand that people are interested in, try and talk to customers, get their point of view. Just do as much digging, because once it is a commitment, and we want people to be committed to the franchise for a decent length of time. So by the time you actually make that final decision as a potential franchisee, you've got to make sure it's the right thing for you, for your circumstances, for your area, for your family, all of those factors in life. But yeah, absolutely, you're right. Do your due diligence, do your research, and ask lots of questions. When I'm talking to a prospective franchisee and I sort of say, any questions, it's always a bit odd if they don't have any questions, because I sort of think, well, I'd have a million questions at this point. I think maybe sometimes people are reticent to ask so many questions, but I just always say, bombard me with questions. I'd much rather you know everything and you've asked everything that you want, rather than you've got a little niggle at the back of your mind going, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? Just ask questions and be honest, and be honest with yourself as well about what you want. What do you want out of this business? Is this a small part-time thing for now to fit around other commitments? Do you want the big business and have a big team? What are you really aspiring to do and to achieve?
Yeah. Well, we will drop all your links in the show notes, but we have to talk about the award win. So you recently were a winner of a Woman Who Solopreneur Award. What made you enter the awards?
I've been aware of it for probably a couple of years now. There's a couple of people I know well, Tessa from Club Hub and Nikki from Pudding and Pie, who've been involved in the past, I think past winners as well. So it's definitely been on my radar. Then I saw Emma Hewitt, who I know was sponsoring, and I was like, well, if Emma's sponsoring, I've got to get involved, because I think she's great and I really support the business now that she's building for herself. I think it's fantastic. So I looked at the application process and then started to obviously look at the Facebook group and get a real feel for the vibe, I suppose, of the organisation. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I just immediately that I started to look at things and get involved, it feels like such a supportive network, and lovely for me to step outside of children's activities. As you said when you were asking me those questions earlier, my sphere of reference is really children's activities, and it's lovely to be in the room, whether that's virtual or real, be in the room with people who do a whole range of different things, because you learn something from everybody, don't you? There's, even if it's a casual chat over a coffee or it's a more structured business chat, you can take so much away from those conversations with people who might do something completely different than you do, but it's business at the end of the day, isn't it? And there's always those things you can take away. So I loved the warmth of it all. And then when I attended on the day, it was like walking into a room and having a big hug. It was so lovely. Everyone was just so friendly, and you're immediately talking to people from different worlds. Like I was talking to an author and then a lawyer, and it was just a lovely blend of people celebrating their own businesses. So it looked amazing from everything I'd read and seen and the online interaction. And then I think when I walked in the room on the awards day, it was everything that I hoped it would be, in terms of that really supportive, warm, celebratory network. So
it's what I've tried. It's what I've worked on. But obviously I can't keep saying to people it's supportive. I try and explain it, but I think until you've been there and been in the room, you don't really see how that will work. And what I love that I've created and I'm really proud of is the fact that it doesn't matter who wins in the room, everyone's just cheering for everybody, and they're so supportive of the winners. Even if they were a finalist and didn't win an award, it doesn't matter. It's that togetherness, and it's that lifting up of everybody, and there is just like I feel the energy radiating from the room when I'm on stage. So it's lovely that you've said that.
You're absolutely right. It's very difficult to put your finger on what creates that, isn't it? And I sort of draw a parallel to a certain degree with the community we have in Kindslingo, because I always say, oh, it's such a lovely community, it's really supportive, but that support is really reliant on all of those individuals displaying those characteristics, isn't it? You can really try and set a tone, but it only really comes to fruition if everybody else is following suit. And I think it's exactly the same thing. You obviously just set that tone, and then everybody who wants to be involved with Woman Who follows that lead. And it was lovely just sitting around the tables over the meals, chatting with people, hearing their stories, learning, swapping contact details, those lovely little notes you had. I just thought those were a gorgeous idea, with the little envelopes being delivered to the tables of little notes of saying hi or well done or whatever it, or can I have a chat with you? I think it's a really lovely idea for connecting people.
Yeah, I've used that for a couple of years now, and it's always been very popular.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Loved it.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your win.
Thank you. It means a lot. It was really lovely and very, as I said, different than the normal type of thing that I'm involved with. And it's lovely to be, I guess, a personal recognition probably is the way to put it from that. So often we're up there with Kindslingo in terms of awards, and it was nice for it to be Anna.
Recognizing you. Well, sadly, we've run out of time. We could chat for hours, no doubt, about franchising and the awards. I always ask my guests to leave the audience with a top tip, piece of advice or piece of wisdom. What would yours be?
Oh, well, this is something that resonates with me. And actually, I've been at a couple of conferences recently and people have repeated this. I mean, it's about growth and development, but it's about making it achievable. So there's the whole thing about do 1% more each day, because 1% more is so small, really, isn't it? It's make that extra phone call or contact that extra person or do this or do that. We can all do 1%. But actually, over time, and there is a number that you get to over a few months, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it really builds up. I think rather than going, right, I'm going to do 50% more tomorrow, because we all know that's unrealistic and unachievable. But just that 1% every day really makes a difference, whether it's to do with personal stuff or whether it's to do with business. So yeah, that's what I'm aiming to do.
Great piece of advice there. Today, I've been chatting with Anna Neville from Kindslingo. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.